In 1991, 1990, 91, 92, somewhere during that period was the original first downloading of the book. I had no intention to write a book, but I knew I was already writing some beautiful spontaneous insights and poetry and songs, mostly songs a lot of the time, and every so often insights coming through. And I wasn't trying to write songs. They would just come through as an overflowing expression of my heart being in pure delight in different moments, spontaneous moments of waves of delight coming through because of that experience of being graced by divine love, because of that experience of knowing that potency of that Kundalini awakening, you could say. And when that download came, it was more like an indication from life saying, here is a window. Here is what I want you to say. Here's what you need to say. Not just in a book, but physically when you're in people's company, we're in their presence also. In order to invite them in so that the book and the message is a window to be able to be immersed in the presence that you and I are even immersed in as you are listening to me in this moment, as you have your fist like that, as I have my hands like this. We are listening, both of us are listening, and we are alternating with our speaking, and we are simultaneously immersed in a certain presence, regardless of our awareness focusing on it or not. It's there 24/7, no matter what. So when the book downloaded, it was life saying, use this as a window to this. So the very first time this book came through saying, this is the first opening words, what you see now, what you hear now, what you feel now, what you are aware of now is all there is now. So, and it goes on more and more. I won't go into the rest of it, but that book came through and I titled it The Power of Now. But it was titled The Power of N.O.W. In 1996, when I was living in Los Angeles, I was looking into publishing it, and I was having difficulty with that, and I realized it's not time to publish this yet. It would be too soon, because of the way it was written, it turns into a conversation between the voice of the heart and the voice of the world, the voice of mind. So that they go into an argument in this dialogue between one another. And the heart is always responding back, endeavoring to remind the voice of the world what it's forgotten, what it really longs for. So it is a dialogue in the beginning of the book. But at that time in 1991-92, when it first came through, that's all that came through. It was a pure dialogue between the voice of the heart and the voice of the world. So in calling it the power of N.O.W, the now, I was using that as a window in order to invite people in, and this is what any teacher does. We invite others into the now so that we can be immersed in the presence, the mystery of this presence of the divine, the presence of divine love that is so subtle that it requires a very dedicated relaxation into the mystery of this presence, a dedicated relaxing into the subtlety and refinement of awareness without going into thinking ahead, without trying to philosophize, without any rhetoric, but using all the languaging, the wording to invite and draw one another into this subtle immersion. And sometimes it's not so easy to see, though, or even to identify what is this, the subtlety of this presence. So that's why then over years and years' time, the book came around, of course, because of circumstance of a certain book coming out under that title also a few years later in the States. It was natural that that book came out to being titled Deep Peace Beyond Suffering, because ultimately peace is the fragrance of divine love. And it was that quality of peace that I recognized in my own family lineage that we were losing touch with during those last 3 or 4 or 5 years when I was living at home. And we were all missing that peace. So our suffering was escalating as that peace was disappearing. So that's why then it was natural, it just somehow evolved into, of course, deep peace beyond suffering. But that doesn't necessarily mean to go beyond suffering, to how to get free of suffering. No, something totally different. How do we welcome the suffering? Because this is the journey in existence. How do we embrace that? How do we see the pearl within